صباح الخير جميعاً. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، السيدات والسادة، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
In the name of Allah, the most graceful, the most merciful. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests of ladies and gentlemen, may the peace and mercy of Allah be upon you, and a very beautiful morning to all of you.
نرحب بكم جميعاً في هذا اليوم المميز الذي يشهد انطلاقة متجددة لحراك سنوي وتظاهرة فريدة من نوعها على مستوى المنطقة، تجمع تحت مظلتها نخبة من صناع القرار والعقول المفكرة والمتخصصين في مجالات صناعة المعرفة من جميع أنحاء العالم، لتسلط الضوء على مسيرة الإنسانية نحو بناء مجتمعات المعرفة، وتطرح التحديات وتستعرض الحلول وأفضل الممارسات. فأهلاً ومرحباً بكم في قمة المعرفة 2018، والتي تحمل شعار الشباب ومستقبل اقتصاد المعرفة. أرحب بكم مجدداً في هذا الصباح، ويسعدني ويشرفني أيضاً أن أقدم هذه القمة برفقة زميلي يوسف عبد الباري. صباح الخير يوسف.
Sabah al-Khair. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I am glad to be hosting this with my colleague, Safiya Shehi. And ladies and gentlemen, would like to welcome all of you at this unique day. On this day, we will be witnessing the renewed start to an annual knowledge forum. And this is a unique event of its kind in the region, bringing together an elite lineup of decision makers. In other words, thinkers and specialists in the fields of knowledge industry from all around the globe. And that is to shed light on the progress of humanity towards building knowledge societies. And in this event, we examine challenges in the present and solutions and the best practices. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, knowledge is power. And in this Knowledge Summit 2018, we are moving under the slogan, Youth and the Future of Knowledge Economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to bring your attention towards the existence of translation headsets from Arabic to English and vice versa, available at your disposal. So please refer to their uses whenever the need arises in any of our upcoming sessions.
إذن نلفت انتباهكم السيدات والسادة إلى توفر الترجمة الفورية باللغتين العربية والإنجليزية، وطبعاً الأجهزة متاحة، يمكنكم طلب المساعدة من الزملاء والزميلات حول هذه القاعة. إذن نرحب بكم مرة أخرى ونفتتح فعاليات قمة المعرفة بالجلسة الأولى بعنوان اقتصاد المعرفة بين الماضي والحاضر والمستقبل، مع البروفيسور بوريس تسيزل رئيس مجلس إدارة شبكة اقتصاد المعرفة. أهلاً به.
Ladies and gentlemen, we kick off the start of the day with the first session under the title Knowledge Economy Between Past, Present, and Future, presented to you by the one and only Professor Dr. Boris Tsyzel, President of the Knowledge Economy Network. Please welcome him.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of knowledge, it's a great honor for me to be able to address you at the start of our program and to have and share with you some thoughts about the past, present, and the future of knowledge economy. I do believe that over the last 10-15 years, knowledge economy has become one of the leading concepts we are facing, and a focus of many, many efforts at the level of governments, corporations, academic world, and elsewhere. I will try to cover in this introductory presentation basically two issues. One is how the concept of knowledge economy has evolved, developed, and the second part will be on how we are addressing the important issues of implementing knowledge economy. Let me just start with this first graph, which I believe gives a very clear picture of how knowledge economy has evolved over the centuries. You can see the three squares. The first one relating to the agricultural era, where among the four economic factors, land was most important. Labor, of course, equally, because at that point, man was depending very much on its physical force and, of course, cultivating the land to survive. In the next stage, in the industrial era, the shift has gone very much into labor and capital. And in the era of knowledge age, we are seeing the strong shift towards knowledge. And that, of course, is something that we can be, on one hand, very satisfied and gratified. And at the same time, it requires from us all much more focused, much more selective approach to what we do, how we do it, how we prepare ourselves for the task we are undertaking. I am going to quote a futurologist, Peter Toffler, who said that knowledge is the most democratic source of power. And he also is quoted to say that the illiterate in this century are not people who cannot read or write, but those who are not capable of learning, then forget what they have learned and learn something new instead. This, of course, is the challenge, because we all are trying to build as much knowledge as we can, but at the same time, we must remain open and flexible for learning something new. So the two constants of our time are really the ever-increasing role and importance of knowledge and the highly accelerated dynamics of change. And these are, of course, quite huge challenges which we need to master as good as we can. And on a personal level, I would say, being a grandfather, that there is probably no bigger pleasure and joy when we see our kids being proud to have learned something from us, and at the same time, when our children learn us, teach us something, we share pleasure with them for having learned from the next generation. Actually, it is the first time in the history of mankind that 4 generations are living together. But are we really living together in the full sense of the word? Unfortunately, in some cultures, in some countries, the youngsters are rushing their elderly parents to the homes of elderly, and very often kids nowadays lead their own life, spend so much time watching sometimes rather stupid TV shows, and we do not communicate enough. But at the same time, we are missing so much that we could learn from each other, and especially in the digital age, I think that we can also learn from our very young children how to master those technologies. As we speak of the speed, I wish to illustrate what is happening by illustrating how much time is needed, or has been needed rather, for a certain product or technology to penetrate the world market and reach the consumer of about 50 million. For the old telephone, it took 50 years. For the mobile phone, already, only 12 years. For the YouTube 4, Facebook 3, and for Twitter, only 2 years. This really shows that the acceleration of dynamics of change is even difficult to imagine, but we, of course, experience it, and we should adapt to it. Let me now try to define what the concept of knowledge economy really means. Generally, of course, we say that knowledge economy is an economy where knowledge has the center place. But there are many elements which need to be listed to see the richness of this concept, which is not only economic, it's also social and to some extent political as well. So I am presenting here 10 criteria which I strongly believe an economy that wants to be recognized as knowledge economy should fulfill. I would start with the sophisticated, well-functioning market, but at the same time, a regulatory system that protects the public interest. We then move to the second criteria, which is a well-functioning ecosystem. An ecosystem which covers the whole range of domains in innovation and entrepreneurship. Then a knowledge economy is focused on the production of high value-added products and knowledge-intensive services. And then that, of course, is very strongly linked to the existence of strongly developed science and R&D, both in corporate world as well as in the public domain. And of course, I cannot underline enough the importance of well-educated population. Highly skilled, creative, motivated, and innovative workforce. Knowledge economy certainly requires also a good physical infrastructure, which of course enables the economy to function properly, but also provides high quality living for the population. It's, as I said, not only economic, it's also political criteria which are important, and that is a stable political and institutional setup. Rule of law, meaning that law is equally applied to everyone. And then the social cohesion. We cannot speak of a knowledge economy, a knowledge society, where social economic differentiation is very high, because it creates social tension and, of course, can disturb the process of further knowledge economy development. Then, of course, the culture of appreciating knowledge, technology, innovation has to be part of the general culture in a country, because only then everyone can contribute enough to make a knowledge economy function properly. Last but not least, of course, we have a well-integrated economy into the world economy. In the global world, we cannot have an isolated, even though very efficient, productive economy, which is not at the same time well integrated into the global economic processes. I've mentioned the ecosystem, and I'm offering this graph just to underline the complexity of it. It involves really practically any aspect of economic, legal system, motivational mechanisms, and all areas of creativity. Because only if the whole entire ecosystem is working in the direction of supporting and rewarding knowledge, creativity, and innovation, then we can speak of an effective and high-quality innovation ecosystem. The World Bank has proposed some 15 years ago this, let's say, model of 4 pillars of knowledge economy. And it includes economic and institutional regime. It includes information infrastructure, the whole area of innovation, as well as education. And I'm happy to add that in Knowledge Economy Network, which I have the honor to represent here today, back in 2011, we have developed also our own 4-pillar model for knowledge economy. And we put in the first place education and training, because without high-quality human capital, knowledge economy cannot exist. The second pillar being science and research, because, of course, ideas need to be developed further, confirmed through research, and that, of course, is critically important. The third pillar is the area of innovation, which means bringing new products and services to the market. And last, but certainly not least, is the pillar of entrepreneurship. And that means implementing personal initiatives of individuals and companies, of course, to the acceptance at the market. Now, a quick rundown how the knowledge economy has evolved over time. We all know that in ancient times, the whole destiny of a community, of a big state, empire, whatever, depended very much on the wisdom and capability of leaders. And of course, philosophers gave a contribution. Most of the people have really been followers, very few innovators. Then we came to the stage of Industrial Revolution, which of course is based on the invention of the steam engine. The second was the invention of electricity, and this all, of course, reduced the burden of physical force being used, and that has, of course, already started the trend towards emphasizing the importance of knowledge and intelligence and skills. Now, with the third industrial revolution, we have the computer-based information society, where many operations which require quite a bit of intelligence depend on the man-made machine called computer. And what we are experiencing now, the fourth industrial revolution, with the artificial intelligence, we are going one step further, and many quite demanding cognitive processes are being dealt with by the computers. We have robots and super robots who are, in the mind of some people, endangering our jobs, but actually this is not the case. They are actually taking over mostly repetitive and less intellectually demanding jobs, leaving more space for us, humans, who of course also have, besides intelligence and knowledge, the feelings. We have the emotional intelligence that helps us, of course, in any activity dealing with people. We can be reminded that, in fact, several of the rather important foundations of knowledge economy are really relatively young. For example, the compulsory education. It only started in Europe, in Baden-Württemberg in Germany, in the mid-16th century. Then Scotland, the 17th, Austro-Hungarian Empire, 18. In UK, Japan, US, France, only in the 19th century. And as we all know, of course, in most developing countries, compulsory education was only rigorously introduced after independence, because colonial masters did not want, of course, the population to be too educated. Now, I have here a comparison of different types of universities, because they are nowadays under big pressure of the highly dynamic changes in the labor market, following the high speed of innovation and preparing, of course, youngsters to be able to perform well in this world market. We have, according to Professor Graham Hills, some 20 years ago, he made this comparison of 4 models. The Napoleonic type of university, which was preparing in the 19th century the future elite, the future functionaries in the state apparatus. We have then the Humboldt University from Germany, which was having a similar function, but with strong emphasis on research. We have the English, the Oxford model, which was already rather different because it was more student-centered, still elitist, but understanding that the process of education needs to focus on the comprehensive development of the personality of the student. And we have the Scottish-American model from mid-20th century, which is more pragmatic, more market-driven, and non-elitist, because it comes already closer to what the vice chair of our network, Professor Mashelkar, is saying: in modern times, we are all knowledge workers. It means we can only perform if we are well equipped with knowledge. Let me now give a brief comparison of what, according to these 4 knowledge economy pillars, what are the needs, the requirements, and expectations in several of these domains. Of course, in terms of compulsory education, a shift for more years, more graduates among the young. And let me say here that in South Korea, which is considered to be a champion in knowledge economy, in the generation 29-34 years, 80% of these young people already have reached university degree. Canada comes second with 60%, Russia 50%. In European Union, the target for 2020 is to reach 40%, but we are, in most countries, still pretty far from that. Now, lifelong learning, of course, is equally important. Nowadays, it is important to encourage students to continue learning, also in the older age, of course. That should increase, definitely, in the post-industrial era. Research is critically important, but what are we really doing? If we just take the indicator of the research intensity, the gross expenditure on R&D, we can see that in the industrial period, there was between 1.5% and 3% of GDP spent for research. And that has to almost double if we want to continue with intensive development of knowledge economy. Here, again, Korea is the champion with 4.2% of GDP devoted for research. And many countries, unfortunately, are giving even less than 1%. In innovation, there are tremendous changes between these 2 periods because initially the innovation process was rather linear. It started with basic science and ended up with a new product on the market. Nowadays, we have a quadruplex innovation paradigm where all actors are involved in innovating and introducing new products. It's much more productive, more challenging, and of course, at the same time, requires a more systematic support by the ecosystem. And finally, entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship needs to become one of the leading areas of support. And it is expected that maybe between 30 and 40% of people will be self-employed, because we are moving into the service economy, and that, of course, is very often provided by an individual or a small company. And of course, the public support has to follow that. In many countries, there is support, but still definitely not enough. Now, I wish to emphasize a feature that we are more or less aware, but the figures here show us how small the success rate of the ideas which we have towards the end successful product being placed or service at the market. The proportion is 3,000 to 1. I must say, when I saw this, when I heard these figures, I was surprised as well, because I was expecting this to be much smaller proportion. And that also requires much more effort and support to those who are innovating, because only a small fraction of those initial ideas will actually end up as successful innovations at the market. And what has changed in the last 15, 20 years, maybe a bit more, is what the information communication technology has brought to us. On one hand, on the left side of this graph, you see the exponential rise of the capability of computer equipment. You see this steep rising line, and exactly the opposite are the prices per unit, which means that nowadays everyone can afford to use and apply computers, and that certainly helps in productivity in whatever area we are engaged. Now let me quickly go towards the end over those 4 pillars and elaborate a bit what are the challenges that we need to address probably in order to be successful in building knowledge economy. In education and training, we still certainly need to do much more to adapt and to prepare the process from kindergarten, elementary, secondary school, up to, of course, post-secondary university education. And I would say a few words primarily about the university education, because there are still many old-fashioned concepts and attitudes resembling the Humboldt model of university, which is out of step with the needs of today. The issue is we need to retrain the professors. Didactics has become a well-recognized science. It's not only a question what you teach, but how you teach, and involving students, of course, as equal partners. I would say that the test of a good professor is whether the professor admits that he or she can also learn from their students, because this is a fact, but often not recognized by the professors. The emphasis nowadays is not on the classical curricula, which we used to have for a long time, but emphasis on soft skills. In Britain, there was a survey 2 or 3 years ago, and among employers, they are being asked, what skills do you expect from the new employees that you are getting with university degree? And you wouldn't believe, 70% of them replied, we expect more soft skills from them. And they include, of course, the capability to work in team, cognitive flexibility, of course, creative thinking, critical thinking, and so on, adaptability. All this is important. Communication, working in teams, and so on. And we are still not teaching enough of that at our universities. Then, of course, the most important task of a university teacher nowadays is to motivate students to continue learning. Because you cannot get a diploma, put it on the wall in your living room and say, this is what I accomplished. No, this is just the beginning of your journey. You have to continue improving and monitoring what is happening, what are the changes. Now, I will show you some shocking data about what is happening at the point of university consolidations. Since universities are not adapting quickly enough, it is happening, and we have here data for the United States. For the last 3 years, 57 universities have been closed. 3 mergers, 3 acquisitions. Even 13 public universities have experienced mergers. This is all under the pressure of the market, which is felt in the United States probably more directly than in many other places. The success story in the United States, of course, is the University of California, which is really a group of universities that operate together in 10 campuses. And of course, they have also a very high success rate in innovation and encouraging students to become successful entrepreneurs. In Europe, there is much less of that. We are still very conservative concerning universities. But in the period between 2000 and 2014, the mergers increased from 1 a year. In the last year, 14 of them happened. In South Korea, which I mentioned 2 times already as a champion of a knowledge economy, as we speak, they have a discussion about leading universities to create a cooperative scheme which will help them to pull together the best possible talents and resources and to reply to the challenges ahead. In Japan, they had a reduction of public funding for universities, and the government told the universities, well, we cannot give you more money. You have to look in your own environment and ask, what services can we do for you? Not just in training, but also, of course, in research and consultancy. In the domain of research, there are some phenomena worth mentioning. On one hand, public funding has a tendency of being limited or even reduced. Corporate funding of research is increasing. So the statistics for the United States shows that among the corporate, it's the big corporations who are giving about half of all the corporate funding for research, and small companies, medium, only 11%. Now, the public funding, of course, needs to be better organized and, of course, increased, because the corporate funding is following sometimes only the most immediate needs and requirements of their business domain. And if we look at the innovation area, we see, as I mentioned, the change of the model of innovation from the classical linear, from basic applied research to research and development, and finally end product, in a much more circular and multi-stakeholder process, which can be and should be supported by the entire ecosystem. Now, quickly to end, as I'm watching the time, I wish to mention here a model of innovation which is very different from what we are usually experiencing when, for example, when a new model of the mobile phone comes, at the market, it is very expensive. And then, of course, later on, because of competition, the prices come down. But the motivation of many companies is just to make the biggest possible profit. If we talk of the socially responsible entrepreneurship, we should look at satisfying the biggest possible number of customers. Of course, still making profit. But just one example. A small company in India has developed a device to check the danger of breast cancer for ladies, which costs only $1. While if you look around markets in Western Europe or generally around the globe, such devices cost about $100. So why not producing things which can help more people? Therefore, the first word is affordable. And then, of course, the other 6 elements we don't have time to elaborate, but all of these have to be taken into account if we want to succeed with innovation, not just directly financially, but also in terms of satisfying the largest number of potential customers. And then, of course, the importance of the innovation ecosystem cannot be underlined enough. I'm showing this graph prepared by Professor Mashelkar, which also summarizes how many players are involved in it. And it's government, it's corporate world, it's academic world, non-government organizations, and many, many other players can contribute to a successful and effective ecosystem. And in the area of entrepreneurship, what we are addressing at the moment really is to have more corporate responsible entrepreneurship. And what is important is to not only support the startups, but the scale-up companies, because the risk of losing is 3 times less. And let me conclude by saying that I have come to Dubai after 20 years. My goodness, I couldn't recognize what you have achieved and you have done. My sincerest congratulations. Indeed. And the initiative with the vision of Sheikh, what you are doing is really not only for your own people, but giving a chance for the world to come together under this knowledge summit and sharing your experiences and also learning from others how we can encourage more knowledge economy and improve conditions for poor people. And I must say that within knowledge economy, I have very often quoted your example, having a minister for happiness. Congratulations. Thank you so much for your attention.